Hello and welcome to Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers podcast, your number one podcast for women reclaiming their life by healing mother wounds and stepping into their power. In this episode, you will learn the 4 traps you want to avoid when healing mother wounds. By listening to the end, you will learn how to recognize these unhelpful patterns and make sure you don't fall into these traps. I'm Matilde and I'm your host. I'm an inner transformation mentor supporting women reclaiming their fullness through the one-on-one 10 weeks program and through Reclaim Your Fullness online community. To know more about these offerings, sign up to the newsletter or visit the website womenreclaimingtheirfullness.me. Now let's get into the topic of today. And let me ask you, do you know if you carry mother wounds? So if you've recognized toxic and narcissistic behaviors in your mother, high chances are you carry mother wounds. And what is the mother wound? The mother wound is a relational wound that comes from not having received emotional support and safety from your mother or from your mother figure. You may have experienced neglect, emotional abuse, physical abuse, abandonment, high levels of criticism, all of this since early childhood, and the result of these toxic behaviors is actually trauma, a wound that we carry in our system. And in this case today we're going to talk about mother wounds. And very quickly now, I'm not going to go into in-depth into the sign of how to recognize you are carrying mother wounds, but I just want to give you a quick rundown of the main signs so that you can feel into it and see if you recognize some of this for yourself. So the main signs of carrying a mother wound would be perfectionism, fear of others' judgment, feeling unloved and undeserving, people-pleasing behaviors, fawning, chronic guilt, feeling responsible for your mother's emotions and also for others around you, hypervigilance, difficulties in relationships. If you can recognize any of these signs in yourself, please know that you're not alone in this. Mother wounds are something we need to understand as daughters of narcissistic mothers, as they are the result of living a childhood with an emotionally unsafe mother or mother figure. Today I want to go through the 4 traps we might fall into the journey of healing such wounds. And these 4 traps are really important to recognize because they can they really stop your healing, and not only they stop your healing, but they actually stop you from living a happy, fulfilling life, from living your life the way you want it. And these 4 traps are blaming, wound worshipping, avoiding triggers, and body bypass. So let's have a look at them one by one. So that we can understand them better, and then I'll give you a real life example to better understand how these traps can work and also to learn not to fall into them. So keep listening. Now, a word before getting into them. Pay attention when you listen to these 4 traps, and if you feel yourself reacting like, I absolutely don't do that, I invite you to keep your mind open. These are traps that usually operate from the shadow, meaning very often we're not aware we're doing this. And a sign that that part has been uncovered, even a bit, is getting very defensive and guarded about it. And I'm saying this because I have been incredibly resistant to admit these aspects about myself. So I really get it. That is actually, if you want, one of the red flags. If you are, while I'm talking about these 4 traps, you're feeling really resistant to one, you're feeling nearly like sort of triggered and like, how would she even say I do that? That is a sign that maybe there might be something there for you to explore a little bit more. And again, I say that from very much personal experience as well as experience in my work. So first trap, blaming. This is when you feel triggered by something and you fall into the trap of blaming others. Your energy and focus are outside of yourself and towards others whose behavior is out of your control. This quickly can lead you to feel very alone and having no hope of ever being happy. If you're constantly blaming your mother, if you're constantly blaming anyone outside of yourself, if you're constantly pointing the fingers at everyone else's behavior as being clearly bad, as being disrespectful, as being this, as being that, whatever, no matter how right you feel about that, still that's out of your control. And this blaming trap is going to lead you to feel extremely lonely in life and also never having the hope to regain control and be happy. Second trap, wound worshipping. This is when you dwell on the past. So when you tell your story of pain over and over, using it as the reason your life is the way it is. There is a time on the healing journey to tell aspects of your past. There is we do that. We recount events and things that have happened. We join the dots. We actually figure, okay, because that thing happened in the past, this is how I'm behaving now. So that is all well and good, and there is a time and space for that. Yet, when we remain stuck in it and keep telling that story over and over, and we use it as an excuse not to be in the present, this becomes very unhelpful and can hold us back from living the life we want and deserve. If you find yourself repeating that same story of pain over and over again to many of the people you encounter or meet, or many of the therapists you go through, or then that's a sign. It's like it's wound worshipping. It's been stuck in the past. Number 3, avoiding triggers. This is where you've done enough work on yourself to know what triggers you. And your strategy has become avoiding the triggers at all costs. And again, there are situations in the healing journey in which it is important to be very kind with yourself and not go from 0 to 100 on things, like exposing yourself to triggers too fast, too soon, because this can re-traumatize your system. So it's important to understand that. At the same time, falling into the trap of avoiding triggers altogether can really stop your healing journey. It'll give you the illusion of having arrived somewhere. It'll give you the illusion of having healed aspects, but actually you're not living. You're not ever being exposed. It's like, I don't know, I've had for a lifetime a fear of heights, but it's not healed by the fact that I just don't go on high buildings. It is still there. I'm just avoiding it. Does that make sense? Now, this is a simple example, but this is what happens. So we avoid it altogether. Now, does that mean that I have to go from being petrified of heights all of a sudden to a massively high building with a glass floor under my feet? Maybe not. That's too much too soon. But there is a power in gently exposing yourself to things that trigger you a little bit at the time, to the point that you can get to a place where you are actually, with your body and everything, fine and grounded in the experience. So that's the difference. And the fourth trap is body bypass. This is when you believe you have healed a certain aspect. You have rationalized it to great degrees. You have read and listened to all there was there on the topic, and you are an expert, which is great. I mean, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to do. Learning about stuff, it's really important. It gives you more chances to bring awareness to it. When we don't know, well, then we don't know. So how can we bring awareness to it? So that is not wrong, okay? But this is when, if we fall into the body bypass trap, is when someone speaks to it. For example, you're the ones that says, oh, I know. You may even get a bit insulted if someone tries to tell you there could be more that you don't know yet. How dare they? So you go through situations that would have triggered you, and you rationalize the entire experience, completely ignoring your body, because you haven't learned that. You don't know that that's part of the healing, a very important one. Or maybe you think you're doing it. I've been one of them, put my hand up for sure on this, and I've also met many people in my work that really strongly believe they're tapped into their body and that they're going in, when in fact they're 100% stuck in the rational mind all the time. it's a thinking of going into the body rather than an actual going into the body. And that's okay. I mean, that's the next level. That's the next layer to uncover. It's when we stop at the rational part, we get the information and stay in the rational mind, but we don't go into the body. So what happens then, we go through situations that were triggering before we learned all of this stuff, and we rationalize the entire experience. So there is like a surface level being fine with it. And yet afterwards, your body's giving you signs, and you may not even connect the two together. So we'll see that when we're going through the real life example, but you may go through an experience that would have triggered you before. Now you know all the mechanisms, so you say it doesn't, but then days later, some stuff shows up in your body and you don't even know where the hell did that come from. Like you could get a migraine out of the blue, or feel exhausted all of a sudden, or you may get very irritable and you don't know how, why, what did get you that irritable. And from this body bypass, it's very easy to fall into the blaming trap and the wound worshipping trap, because you've rationalized it all, you know it all so well, and yet people still trigger you, so it's their fault. We fall into blaming. Or despite all the work I do, despite me knowing all of this stuff, my past is still so impacting my life, and so on. So, and again, I've been through all of this, and I go through them again and again, so no judgment there. Trust me, it's part of the process, and learning to understand them and be aware of these traps makes a massive difference. So let me check in with you now. Did you recognize some of these traps in your behavior? Did you get a bit defensive at any of them? Share in the comments. And again, if you have gotten a bit defensive, that's okay. You have no idea the amount of resistance I've had on this. So trust me, that's again part of the process. Now let's go through a real life example to understand better how you may fall into one of these traps. As this will support you in catching it, we're also going to talk about the red flags in each example. So I'm going to use an example that has been very much part of my lived experience. You can change this to something that works for you. But for myself, carrying mother wounds, of course, as my mother has been toxic and narcissistic. She's had toxic and narcissistic behaviors all my childhood, and she still does, which have been very traumatic to experience when I was a child. So one thing I carried in myself, and I still do, is still there, hasn't gone away, because it's not something that at one point just goes away. We still discover layers of it as we go on. So one thing has been the fear of judgment from others, and the belief that I'm not lovable unless I people please and make sure everyone is good all the times around me. So with that, having to invite people in my home, so being the host to any event in my own home, because of these things, has been extremely challenging and the cause of a lot of triggering for me. And of course, this started way before I got aware of any of this, but the more I got aware, the more I realized how many coping strategies I was using in order to be able to say, oh yeah, of course, let's do this event at my house. And then, of course, the traps that I was falling into. So this is the example I want to bring today. You're hosting in your house. You're hosting an event in your house. You can place the details you want to this. It could be friends or family. It could be whatever event, birthday, Christmas dinner, doesn't matter what. You can place the details, and you can even do this as a journal exercise if you imagine the scenario that's actually something that's triggering for you, and going to how you would normally react to this or behave with this, that can help you finding those red flags that we're going to talk about. So the important part of this exercise is the situation is triggering and challenging for you. That's the important part. So maybe the guest in question behave in ways that annoy you. Actually, one thing I want to add for the fourth, the body bypass trap, the situation that you're bringing as an example may have been triggering, and you may think now that you're completely fine with it. I still invite you to go through that situation and see if that body bypass trap is what you're falling into. So anyways, you're inviting guests, you're hosting an event at your home, and maybe the guest in questions behave in ways that annoy you. You find yourself getting more and more irritated. They may be late, they may not get that they need to take their shoes off in your house, for example, or the behaviors that you assume are normal and that you want. I mean, they're common and they're obvious, and people should get once they get into your house that's how they behave. Okay, so maybe they're loud, maybe they never leave, and again you're getting irritated because they should get that it's past whatever time, it's about time that they left. They make comments that are annoying for you and so on. So that's the experience you've had or you have when you're inviting guests into your house for an event, or some particular guest maybe. So let's have a look at what falling into the traps would feel like. So for the first one, blaming. So you're irritated, you're annoyed, you're all of the things that you're triggered. You blame the guests. They are disrespectful. They don't get how to behave in other people's houses. They have no manners. Their behavior is positively ridiculous. They should know better. Does that sound familiar at all? I've definitely been there plenty of times. The use of should is a big red flag of getting into the blaming trap. When you start shooting shoulds everywhere, maybe when you're talking about it afterwards, that's a red flag that you're into the blaming trap. Another red flag is the complete lack of taking responsibility, which is different than self-blaming. That's a different thing. But taking responsibility means maybe they behaved the way they behaved because you didn't quite communicate clearly what you were expecting from them. Maybe you did not express your boundaries fully. Maybe you didn't actually let them know very clearly the house rules and how things work, or a time to leave. You didn't give them a time to leave. You stayed into the expectations that they should get it and they should behave a certain way, but you didn't actually take responsibility. You weren't responsible and you didn't communicate clearly because of the fear of being judged, because of people pleasing, because of all of that. And it's okay. I get it. For me, to set a boundary with someone that was coming to my house felt like death. If I didn't behave in the best way possible, making sure they were super comfortable and doing all for them and all of that, of course, then that wound would rip open. And I was afraid that I would be rejected and mistreated like my mother did. So that's all okay, but that in the subconscious fuels this thing that then we do, where we then blame others for their behavior, because their behavior forces you to have to face those wounds, or you can avoid them by blaming. Does that make sense? So red flags for blaming: using the word should, it's everyone else's fault, and you're taking no responsibility. Wound worshipping is the second trap. So how would that look like? You're having this event, you're the host and whatever, and now you're falling into the trap of wound worshipping. This is where you blame yourself. So instead of pointing the finger at them, you're actually blaming yourself, and you're also blaming your tragic past. It goes into, if only you had a different upbringing, you would be able to be normal and go through inviting guests over like a normal person should. And I'm not sure if this sounds familiar to you, but oh boy, I have gone through this way of thinking so many times. How could you even set boundaries when it is so hard for you because of your mother? Blaming the past, blaming your mother's behavior for your inability to communicate now. And again, is there a little bit of truth in that? Of course. Of course there is. Of course you have difficulties now because of the past you've had. That's okay. And it's actually important to accept that, because otherwise that self-blaming gets even worse. So we start actually just feel faulty by default, like we were born faulty. No, of course something happened in your past that is causing the behavior in your present. But when we stay stuck in that, we stay stuck in this sob story in the past, and we get confirmation of how faulty we are because of our past, and we just remain there, we never actually implement the things that would help us to shift those patterns in the present. So we're never empowered to actually do something about it now. We're still living in that past. We're bringing it back over and over and over, and we're going back to it over and over and over. We're not actually living in the present. And in the present, you have full control of how you behave. Your mother isn't here anymore. Those situations are not here anymore. You're in a completely different place, in a completely different time. And here, now, you have power. But wound worshipping does not let you see that. So the red flags for wound worshipping are, it's so hard. If you're saying that very often, that's a red flag. It's so hard for me. It is so hard. It's so hard. That is a big red flag that you're wound worshipping. If after every event you're telling again and again the story from your past that is causing your pain now, that's another red flag. If you're using words such as normal to define how you should behave, but you're unable to. So again, the use of should and the use of the word normal. The separation between you and normal people. Normal people being the one that have not gone through the terrible past that you've experienced. And blaming your incapacity of being a good host to everyone attending. So the people that are actually attending your event, you're telling them. You're actually making a story out of how bad you've organized this, and the house is so untidy. But sure, that's just me, with my past, and how bad this is, and how bad I've cooked, and how, I'm so sorry, I couldn't do it any better. It's just, with my story and with what I've been through, this is the best I can do. And I know that listening to this can sound extremely triggering. I remember when I started facing these facts for myself, it was extremely triggering. It was like, how dare you tell me that I behave like this? But it's so, so, so important on your healing journey to recognize if you're wound worshipping, because it can really keep you stuck on a loop of a lot of pain, never being able to actually feel how powerful a person, how powerful a human being you are. So number 3, avoiding triggers. So how would we fall into the trap of avoiding triggers when we're talking about the whole hosting an event in your house? This is when you don't invite guests anymore. You've learned about yourself, and this is triggering for you. It's challenging, so you don't do it. You stop doing it. You just don't host. That's it. It doesn't matter if some people would be nice to have over. It doesn't matter if you're feeling lonely all the time because you have no friends. You just don't host. That's the avoiding of the triggers. You just don't do heights. That's it. You don't try a little bit, maybe with someone that it's a little bit easier, that you're a bit more comfortable with, and then a little bit more, and then, one step at a time is trying to feel into your body, trying to build safety into your system. No. You just don't do it. That's the avoiding of triggers. So the red flags are you use terms such as I can't, I don't do it, it's not possible for me, I will never be able to do this. And again, of course you're telling me, but is that not something, if I'm having to set a boundary with someone, can I not say this is not possible for me? Of course you can. Different context. In this case, you're actually suffering by not being able to do those things. you feel lonely, you feel you have no friends, you struggle being part of anything, you don't take part in any project or any social event because you are afraid of being exposed to having to host an event, and that triggers you so much and you want to avoid it, so you avoid anything that could bring you to that, and you're not living and you're suffering because of that. So that's very different than setting a boundary with someone and saying, no, that's not possible for me. That's it. That's a boundary that is actually protecting you and making sure you're living the best life possible. In this case, you are actually really unhappy and suffering as a result of avoiding the triggers. And then the fourth trap would be the body bypass. So in this case, you've rationalized the entire situation to perfection. So you do invite guests, although this used to be very triggering for you, but now you're over it. So you invite them and you go through the event with a smile, although internally you're gritting your teeth. And you may not even be aware that you are. That's the thing with body bypass, because not being in touch with your body and being stuck in the rational mind, you don't even know that internally you're all tensed up. And you're not implementing anything, although you fully believe you are. So you've done all this rationalization, you've got all these tools, but you're not actually using them. You think you're using them, or you think you've decided you've created your own version of the tools, but you're not actually really using them. And you get angry at anyone who points out that you seem uncomfortable, because you answer that you're perfectly fine. How dare they? The thing is, you've learned a lot about all of this, but you never connected any of it with your body, so you never fully worked with what is stored within your body, because that's really uncomfortable. That's the uncomfortable part of healing. Rationalizing, if you think that's uncomfortable, think again, because rationalizing, it's like a field trip. The mind loves that. Yes, we discover uncomfortable truths, maybe about our mothers, about our past, about ourselves. There's grief, there's all sorts of stuff that comes up, but the really uncomfortable part is when these things come up, such as grief, anger and stuff, is actually going into them, going into the body, finding where they're stored, and then process them and let them out and make them move through the waves. All of that is extremely uncomfortable and not very easy to do just by listening to a podcast or just by reading books. It requires support and it requires work. That's why very often this part, the body bypass, it happens after a while. It doesn't happen straight away. It's like the trap that we start falling into when we've done a certain amount of work on ourselves, and then we go into this sort of place where we think we've arrived, but we haven't, because ultimately there isn't a destination to arrive to. It's an ongoing, lifelong process of self-discovery. So you can't, with this body bypass trap, you can't tell the signs that your body is actually communicating to you. So the red flags for this are the I know answer. So if someone tells you, are you sure you're okay? You look a bit stressed. You know that you could tell these people that it's time to leave. Oh, I know. I'm totally aware of it and I'm 100% fine. Thank you very much. I've given that answer a million times over. So there's no judgment. If you're feeling this like quite intensely, I so get it, because I really felt it extremely intensely when I was made aware of this behavior in myself. And I'm still working on catching it, because it does creep up. It's one that I still have to work with quite a bit. The other red flag is getting irritated if someone wants to support you, because you're fine and you don't need any support. You've got it all figured out. What the hell? Another red flag is feeling ill before or after events you believe you're absolutely comfortable with. So you start asking yourself, I don't get it. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with this. Why is all of a sudden that I'm feeling ill? And someone may suggest maybe it's because you're nervous about such an event, and you're like, no, absolutely not. Sure, I'm fine with that. I've worked tons on that, and I'm so fine with that. This must be something else. It must be like something that just came out of the blue. No, it's just another layer. But we are bypassing the body, and you're staying stuck in the rational mind. So that's the body bypass. So have you recognized any of the red flags now that we spoke about a real life event? You're welcome to share in the comment. The next thing that comes up is, how do we work with this? How do we work with this? So for all of those, there's different ways to work with, and it would make this episode extremely long. And also, it's not enough to just listen to the episode. There's actually shadow work and work to do to bring these patterns into the light, become aware of them, actually start catching them. But definitely becoming aware of the red flags is the first step. The more you can recognize the red flags, the less you're going to fall into these traps. Now, with that said, having a mentor that supports you in catching these patterns is very important support. As I said, these things live in the shadow. They happen in our subconscious. We're not aware of it happening. There is a part that wants to keep those things going in us because there's some level of protecting us from being hurt again, like we did when we were children, like we were when we were children. So all those coping strategies that were set in place when you were a child, going through very traumatic experiences with your mother, created these patterns, which had a point back then, but they're not helpful anymore now. But that part still wants to keep those things going. So having someone from the outside that points out your blind spots, that supports you in bringing those blind spots into the light, it's very, very important. And it is much easier for someone on the outside to spot them than for you to spot them in yourself. So having support with this, it's really, really important. With that said, your awareness can make a huge difference. There's going to be a part of you that will resist admitting to having often fallen into these traps. That resistance that you feel is another sign that there may be something there for you to explore. We said that at the start. If you are feeling resistance as we're going through these 4 traps, that may be a sign that there may be something there for you to explore. Maybe you've explored it already, but maybe there's a layer deeper to go. Because there's always a layer deeper to go. That's so far, that has been my experience. I may be standing corrected as I go on in life, I don't know. But so far, what I've experienced is that there's always a deeper layer that we can go to. And so with that, if you would like support with this, with learning to work with this, learning to recognize these traps in yourself and fully unpacking them, fully actually release them and not having to be blocked in your healing anymore by these traps, the one-on-one inner transformation program that I offer is for you. We do work on this on the program quite powerfully. So if you're interested in that, you can check the link in the description of the episode. And with that said, I am sending you much love and bye for now. Have a wonderful week.